Welcome to the webinar, everyone. Today we will share insights into maximizing municipal energy strategies, focusing on energy savings performance contracting. So today you will hear from Lindsay Hawes, who's the Municipal Energy Program Manager, Sustainability and Mobility Department at the City of San Diego. She will be in conversation with Dale Hawes, who is our energy savings performance contracting expert, longtime practitioner. I am Elizabeth Stewart of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and I run the eProject Builder and the ESCO and ESPC research area here at the lab. We'll also be joined by Dana Robson, who is leading up some of the work on eProject Express. And we will also hear briefly from Daniel Stockmall, U.S. Department of Energy. So Daniel, I think you want to say a little bit about the ESPC campaign.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Liz. So good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to our friends on the West Coast. I'm Daniel Stockmall, and I'm an ORISE Fellow at the U.S. Department of Energy. I work in the State and Community Energy Programs Office in support of DOE's Energy Savings Performance Contracting Campaign. Now, many of you may be tuning in today because you're already participating in the campaign, but if not, I'd like to introduce you guys to this opportunity. So the ESPC campaign is a national initiative to enhance and expand the use of energy savings performance contracts to upgrade public sector buildings, improve efficiency and resilience, reduce utility expenses and emissions, and achieve other goals. The campaign works with our partners to achieve these outcomes by sharing tools, practical resources, and best practice approaches, leveraging both DOE expertise and resources, and by inviting our partners to share their own experiences and strategies. So in addition to showcasing ESPC tools and practitioner experiences through webinars such as this one today, the campaign also offers partners foundational trainings on ESPC and measurement and verification, opportunities for peer exchange, and Ask an Expert office hours. So as part of this initiative, the campaign partners will share their project and measurement and verification data with DOE to demonstrate the impact of their ESPC investments. This allows partners to showcase their project and program achievements to their communities and supports DOE recognition of our partners' contributions towards the campaign-wide goal of reaching $1 billion in measured and verified savings by 2030. So with these goals in mind, we invite organizations across the non-federal public sector to join. This includes state agencies, local governments, K-12 schools, universities, and hospitals, and market stakeholders such as ESCOs, owners' representatives, and financial institutions are also welcome as campaign supporters. So to join or for more information, please visit the ESPC campaign website or reach out to us at the email address listed here. Now, I know we're all excited to hear from Lindsay about the City of San Diego's latest ESPC efforts. So without further delay, I'll turn it back over to you, Liz. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel. So we will hear at the end of our presentation a little bit about eProject Express. Just a really quick look at ESPC, Energy Savings Performance Contracting. Most of you are probably familiar with it, but it is a fantastic tool for implementing and financing these large energy efficiency retrofits. And it's really in the nexus where public institutions' missions, for example, healthy and safe working and learning environments, etc., meet and intersect with all these other goals, such as reduced facility costs, emissions, deferred maintenance, all kinds of goals, as well as, funds and grant stewardship. So eProject Express is a US DOE funded tool specifically designed for state and local governments, as well as educational institutions, to document, track, and demonstrate the value of their ESPC retrofits. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but without further ado, we will go into our conversation with Lindsay and Dale. Whoops, sorry, let me go back, and I am going to stop sharing so that Lindsay and Dale can come on to camera now.
Great, thanks, Liz. Lindsay, how in the world are you today?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing wonderful. How's everyone else doing?
Good, good. As I thought about us starting our time together, I think that probably there's a big advantage for the audience if you just share a little bit about your background, your role with the city, and some of the challenges that, well, the 8th largest city in the United States face. When I think about San Diego, I have lots of fond memories of visiting there for a host of reasons. But when I think of managing a city and its challenges, well, not only are you the 8th largest city, but I think you're larger than 8 states. So there must be a few challenges that you face from time to time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, everybody, and thanks, team, for inviting me onto this webinar. I'm Lindsay Hawes. I'm the Municipal Energy Program Manager. I work in the Energy Division within the Sustainability and Mobility Department at the City of San Diego. And as Dale had mentioned, we are a very large city. I've been with the city for 5 years, and I'm still learning a ton about how we operate and all the different facilities and, just various aspects of what the city does and how we do it. So I anticipate learning for a very long time and continuing on within that trajectory with my career. In the 5 years that I have been at the city, we have done a lot of planning that has kind of set us on a trajectory, and we have faced some challenges along the way, but so far it's been relatively smooth moving, and I will attribute that in large part to some really progressive leadership within the city, as well as progressive elected officials. We have a mayor who has been in his position now for 4 years, so the majority of the time I've been at the city, that has been really supportive of the ambitious goals that we have been setting for ourselves. Back in 2019, when I was relatively new at the city, we adopted the Municipal Energy Strategy. And so that was the first document where we established a goal for ourselves in our municipal buildings and operations to achieve zero emissions by 2035, not net zero, but actually zero emissions by 2035. We've got about 400 facilities. We've got about 4,000 vehicles that we're trying to electrify that will plug into those facilities. We perform water treatment and wastewater treatment for the entire city of San Diego. We have a fleet of trash trucks, and we run a few landfills. So there is quite a bit of activity that it generates a significant amount of emissions. So for our leadership to get on board with setting a zero emissions goal for those operations is pretty impressive. So the fact that they were just able to, get behind that and support it has really been a huge source of wind in our sails. Once the Municipal Energy Strategy was adopted, our department then updated our climate action plan. That was adopted in 22, I think. And that actually not only adopted the municipal zero emissions goal, but then set a net zero emissions goal by 2035 for the entire city of San Diego. So citywide, every building, every resident, working in a net zero emissions building, and ideally we're, sequestering whatever we emit, in some way or another. So we've really set an ambitious goal for the city, not only for ourselves, but for all of our residents as well. And then I will just, in terms of challenges, once we set those goals, the challenge became like, how the heck do we do this? And how are we going to pay for it? And that really is the biggest challenge. So, I think, we'll talk more about this, but that's really where the energy savings performance contracting model comes to play, is bringing some financing and funding to the table to help us really address that significant financial challenge that we are going to face to get this work done.
Lindsay, it's interesting to hear you say that. As I thought about our time together today, I began to reflect back on how long it's been, nearly 3 decades of energy savings performance contracting, where by and large, the focus was, how do we build stuff? How do we fix stuff without any money? And here, in your example, you're really coming at from a different direction. I might add that over the course of time, it evolved into the fact that, hey, look, not only are we saving energy, but this has an impact on greenhouse gases. And here we're really flipping the model over and saying, no, our strategy is to have a climate action plan and to put together a number of strategies to go about and achieve that. And our vehicle to achieve part of it's going to be energy savings performance contracting, right? So how did you hear about that as a tool?
Well, I've been working in this industry for quite a while, a couple decades now. And so I was aware of energy savings performance contracting just through, the various efforts that I had been engaged in through, I was a previous implementer of energy efficiency programs on behalf of utilities. And so energy savings performance contracting as a general premise, I was fairly familiar with it. But you're right, flipping it to really address decarbonization and electrification of natural gas burning systems and relatively old buildings is I think a slightly different approach. So we're really excited about testing this theory that this performance contracting model can actually help us achieve these decarbonization goals. At the end of the day, we know that efficiency improvements, whether or not we are able to garner enough savings to actually pay for electrification in a large way across a portfolio of facilities, the efficiency savings that we do achieve are going to reduce our operating costs, right? And so that's a win in and of itself. If we can reduce the amount of money that we are spending on electricity and on natural gas, especially noting that we are probably, I know that we pay more for electricity than the vast majority of any other, utility customer in the country. That's going to have a huge impact on our bottom line as a city, and that's going to free up funds for other capital improvements or just other initiatives that our leadership decides to prioritize.
So coming into it, you had a bit of a background, and then there's this whole cadre of people that need to be engaged, particularly in a large city administration. You mentioned the support of the mayor, but gosh, I got to believe there's a lot of work to try to get others to embrace your vision of how to get this done using ESPC as a vehicle. Tell us a little bit about that and the kind of hurdles that you faced.
Yeah, for sure. We have a large administrative body here at the city, so getting all of the right decision makers behind this plan was definitely a process. I do want to say, before I talk about sort of the external or internal, but other parties outside of our department, I am very fortunate to have a large team. I know several of them are on this webinar, so thanks for joining, guys. Our department has, I think, 60 people in it across sustainability and mobility. The energy division alone is like 15 people. So the fact that we have manpower, woman power to put behind this effort is also a huge part of what has enabled us to be successful thus far. So leveraging all of that sort of teamwork power within our department, once we had our internal leadership on board, which again, we've got some great leaders here within our own department, within our branch of community services, and then our elected officials as well. Once all those folks were on board, we really got down to the implementation and tactical partners within the city. And so first and foremost, that became our procurement team. We are a charter city. We had to update our municipal code in order to adopt a procurement strategy that would allow us to leverage California State Code 4217, which enables us to secure energy conservation contracts without competition, as long as they keep our city financially in the black. So as long as we're, spending a little bit less on our performance contracts than we would be to our typical business as usual utility payments, we're allowed to procure these services without competition. That was a brand new model. So getting our procurement team and our legal and contracting lawyers on board with that model took some time. We had to really help them understand how 4217 works, what the spirit of that code was really meant to allow for and to allow local governments to deploy. We then had to put in place an entire new procurement structure. We created an RFQ that allowed us to go out and identify partnering ESCOs as well as other vendors. We have an entire bench, not only of partnering ESCOs now, but also solar and battery storage providers and microgrid providers as well. And we intend to enter into contracts with them for portfolios of facilities that will allow us to reduce our operating costs and perform these, execute these performance contracts. So yeah, the other folks, our Department of Finance, our debt management group, all of those sort of really instrumental administrative components of how these contracts are going to be procured, executed, and then implemented financially. We're still working through all of those conversations and learning as we go, but so far everyone has really been a willing and pleasant partner to work with. So again, very fortunate. Dale, I also want to mention our Department of General Services facilities team. They are the folks who manage these or maintain these buildings, as well as the asset managing departments themselves. The folks who really care for and are the stewards of our recreation centers, our libraries, our police stations, our fire stations. Again, these are relatively old facilities. We have a huge backlog of maintenance that quite simply has not been performed over the years due to a lack of funding and a lack of manpower. And so For the most part, those folks are excited about the opportunity to leverage this model to bring, again, funding to projects that are going to improve their operations, improve the comfort of their constituents, improve their lighting in the libraries, maybe allow us to get better air quality in our recreation centers. So they're excited about the benefits and the possibilities. And yeah, it's a fun web of stakeholders that we are working with internally.
Well, nothing better than starting with a law to bring on lots and lots of folks from an educational standpoint, for sure. As you think back on that, because it's really been a relatively short period of time that all that education and to get you where you are. When you think about the order, what would you tell other folks listening, other cities, towns, municipalities? Is there a place where you would start or change the order of who you'd bring on board in that educational process?
No, I don't think so. I mean, honestly, I think legal and procurement really are the top two, right? I mean, we can't do anything here if our legal team isn't supportive of it. And so, again, we've been fortunate to have an attorney assigned to our department to these initiatives that has some awareness and familiarity with performance contracting through some other initiatives that predate my time. So really having him as an ally, and then working with the procurement team. I think having those folks on board is ideal. Personally, we attempted to get the facilities team on board with this early on. And they were along for the ride, but they haven't really ever been able to, I think, engage and take this and help us run with it, simply because they are just understaffed and putting out proverbial fires in facilities left and right every single day. So we learned over time that as much as we want to, link arms with them and walk through this together, we are really we're in a position to bring them solutions. And so they're off doing their own thing, working on their own priorities, and waiting for us to bring those solutions to them for the most part.
Remarkable how astute that is. I've watched for literally decades members of the ESCO community knock on the doors of the facility folks and say, I can help you. And of course, they need legal and procurement or it's not going anywhere. And so people can spend an inordinate amount of time when it really is that backside work, the educational work, the concept work that can make these projects go and really be as effective as they should be. So let's see. Administrative leadership, legal, finance, procurement, the facility team. And as you mentioned, they inherit whatever work gets done, right? So having them have a little bit of a role in decision-making and how some of this is done is a big deal.
It really
since they'll
is.
be responsible to help sustain the savings that you create. Did I miss anyone?
I think two key entities. Yeah. One is our labor partners, right? So we have all of our employees are represented by a local union or several. And so ensuring that we are preserving their jobs and being really sensitive to the impacts that bringing an ESCO in could potentially have on workloads and abilities to hire and that sort of thing. That's a big discussion here at the city. So we're just getting ready to navigate those discussions in a big way. The other one is our utility. We actually have two load serving entities here. We have San Diego Gas and Electric, which is the distribution and transmission utility. And then we have a community choice aggregator, San Diego Community Power, who is procuring the electricity for our facilities. And they have a 100% renewable electricity product. So that is actually the product that we procure for all of our electricity demand and loads here at the city. So that 100% electricity part with SCEP, that's covered. We're going to keep procuring that. We are trying to bring on as much renewables as we can to our own facilities so that as they work on procuring more and more renewables to cover the loads of the entire city by 2035, because again, our climate action plan calls for everybody to be net zero, and we want everybody to have access to that 100% renewable electricity product. We want to kind of bring as much of our own onto the grid as we possibly can to let them procure for the rest of the community. SDG&E, on the other hand, obviously as we electrify everything, the amount of electrons that are going to be flowing through all of our pipes and wires here is increasing significantly. And we are trying to work as closely as possible with them to make sure that our distribution network is going to meet the needs of these increased electric loads. And so that also is a very, very important piece of this puzzle that I really can't stress enough how critical that relationship is. And that's definitely something we're working through on a daily basis.
Yeah, kudos to you guys. I mean, really, decarbonization, more so than ESPC projects in the past, really have a direct influence on the local utility. Could be a considerable amount of increase. And then as you start using renewables, then you may see a fluctuating load. Lots of things that need to be managed there to make sure that you're all in partnership together, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, it's interesting because we recognize that there is a balancing act that we're going to start needing to pay more and more and more attention to as we bring on additional loads, like you're saying. So we have lofty goals, again, in place with regards to technology and the idea that possibly across all of our facilities, we could serve as somewhat of a virtual power plant. And so that's where some of those other vendors I spoke about, microgrid and battery storage and solar vendors, come into play. We'd like to deploy as much of that as we possibly can. We're leveraging our ESCO partners to do that at the facilities that they are touching, assuming that we're going to be able to experience some cost savings through some long-term PPAs for renewables that are going to allow us to, you know, garner some savings that are going to cover the cost of some decarbonization. And also working with San Diego Community Power on things like a feed-in tariff, you know, trying to just push on every lever that we can so that we are you know, proverbially leaving no stones unturned to figure out how we can orchestrate this, you know, very complex decarbonization effort, and again, have some balance and try not to just throw any aspect of this completely out of whack, and keep all of our systems orchestrated and you know, working towards this larger goal.
You know, that interagency partnership building that you've talked about more than once, Lindsay, is really admirable. It's not that any one of us has all the answers to all the questions that pop up any longer, but individual players have a lot to bring to bear. And it's really ingratiating for you to reach out to those folks and make them be partners. Now, we know that there's an energy savings piece to this. We know there'll be some other costs involved. So you just reached into capital budgets for the rest of it and it was all taken care of, right?
I wish. No, not at all. We're looking for as much funding as we possibly can. So we are going after grants. We've got a pretty active grant team. There's quite a bit of money out there for decarbonization, but it is actually buried within or sort of under the guise of resilience, which of course is another priority of ours. In our municipal energy strategy, we have 5 major priorities. We've got efficiency, renewables, zero emissions policies to really hold ourselves accountable, which I have not spoken about, but we do have a pretty significant policy in place. We also talk about the importance of resiliency and then workforce training as well. So when it comes to the resilience element, as a local government, obviously we are serving our constituents every day. As grid disruptions or other sort of disasters or disruptions happen, we are, you know, it's our job to help our residents continue to operate and rebound from those disruptions as best they can. So we implement we run cooling centers. All of our libraries and many of our recreation centers serve as quote unquote cooling centers for the community. When we have high heat days, those are places that we need to continue to keep cool so that folks can take refuge if they need. We are looking to deploy microgrids and what are called resilience hubs, which I'm sure many folks here have heard of if they're following along, because that is kind of the latest terminology for facilities that are equipped with microgrids, ideally renewable powered microgrids and other resilience features that are going to allow our communities to, again, weather these disruptions and rebound as best they can. So with all of the funding that's out in the ether right now for resilience hubs, we're trying to go after that funding to possibly actually not deploy the microgrids, but cover the costs of some of the things that need to take place first before a microgrid can actually go in. So for example, making our recreation centers more efficient, sealing them. A lot of our recreation centers are just kind of open air. We live in San Diego. We're, very fortunate to have wonderful weather, but if we have a wildfire and the air quality decreases significantly, right now our recreation centers are, have a bunch of jealousy windows and there's really no air quality control. So we want to seal up these facilities, make them more efficient, improve their envelopes, and then use that funding to do those sort of initial things. Also, there's going to be probably some asbestos remediation that we'll need to take care of considering the age of our facilities. And then leverage our partners for that third party, private capital market funding for the actual renewables and microgrid solutions. So we're trying to figure out how we can tackle some of those bigger challenges that we're facing with that grant funding, and then supplement the budgets for these larger performance contracts or, resilience hub type efforts through a creative capital stack. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, not to be too cheesy here, but I think folks are probably picking up on maximizing strategies. It's about having strategies in lots of different places, and when they congeal, when they come together, then you can leverage that in the maximum impact for sure. Now, interestingly enough, Lindsay, and I thought this might happen with the message that you're sharing, I got this little note that says there's so many questions that we're going to dart out for a few questions through Liz right now, and then perhaps we'll return just a moment. Liz?
Yes, we've had a few questions come in. So first, a question from Jean. Question is, are the solar and microgrid contracts able to be used by other agencies via piggybacking?
Great question. I don't know. I think that's something you should ask your legal team. I will say though that the relationships that we have with these vendors right now do not actually involve any contracts. So we ran an RFQ, a request for qualifications. We had all of these vendors submit their quals, and then we ranked and scored them and picked the highest scoring vendors to bring them onto a pre-approved bench. So basically these are the vendors that we've pre-vetted that we know we want to go and work with. The model that we're working under using California 4217 is going to allow us to bring in those vendors without a contract to perform analysis and design. And then once we are ready to execute an actual contract, they are going to bring the funding to the table, and we're going to enter into that 25-year, 25-year long agreement where they pay for the project up front, they own it, they operate it, and we simply procure the renewable electricity or resilience that those systems are providing at a rate that is lower than what we would typically be paying to our utility across that 20 to 25-year term. So that's one of the nice parts of this model that we've built, is there is really no requirement for a contract at the very front end, and instead we enter into that contract after the design and feasibility has been proven and we're ready to execute and actually construct these projects, and of course using that funding that the partner brings to the table. So whether or not that's piggybackable, I would be surprised. My gut tells me no, but again, talk to your legal team. If you've got ambitious and progressive procurement and legal folks out there, they might be on board with that.
Great. A few more questions here. Ron Allen from Go-Aco, if I'm saying that, County of Sacramento. Does it make sense to include building electrification measures in the ESPC? I'm thinking that electrification might have long payback period, hence these measures might dilute the overall ESPC offer, sacrificing other energy measures, longer payback periods like building envelope.
That's a legitimate hypothesis. We are testing that hypothesis right now. I think we've got a great partner that we're working with in this first round, and we've put them to the test. They've gone out, we've given them a portfolio of around 60 facilities as kind of this first tranche that we're putting forward to test the model. And we're going to find out here in about a week whether or not electrification and decarbonization the extent to which decarbonization is going to impact the ability to perform, pursue efficiency and exactly how far we can push this model. So stay tuned. We'll find out.
I mean, ESPC is amazing at bundling longer and shorter payback measures, right?
Yes.
But electrification can sometimes be in a whole nother category of long payback times, right?
Yes, we shall see.
Yeah, great. Same person, a question. Are you at liberty to share the names of the ESCOs that you have implemented or plan to implement ESPC projects with?
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
they could reach out to you directly.
Yeah, I mean, we're a local government. Everything we do is public knowledge. So our first partner is Willdan. And then the other ESCOs that we have brought on to the bench, I can tell you those in just a second here. Let's see. We've got Noresco, Ameresco, Siemens, and AECom. Those are the 5 shortlisted firms. And Willdan was the one we selected first. And this is our first tranche that they're working through right now. And we're going to see how it goes and then figure out next steps to potentially deploy additional portfolios to these other ESCOs.
Great. We have a couple more questions. So this is all on your project website. Someone is curious about obtaining copies of the contracts that were used to procure the ESCOs. And before you answer, I'll just put in a plug for the US DOE model contract documents, which there'll be a link to in a later slide. And those model documents are in the process of being updated. So you should keep an eye out for those DOE documents. But I guess I'm wondering, could someone reach out to you and see those contracts if you're willing?
Yes, again, we don't have contracts, but
Okay.
I'm happy to share the RFQ that we used to solicit the qualifications. And then for the ESCOs specifically, after we narrowed down to the 5, we released an RFI, a request for information. And we said, hey, here's a hypothetical portfolio of facilities. Here's some energy information about these facilities that we've collected through historical energy audits. Tell us how you would go about packaging these together, what measures you might identify, how you would pursue electrification. And we received their responses, we performed interviews, and that's how we landed on Willdan as our first selected partner. So I'm happy to share both the RFQ and the RFI if you want to reach out to me. That'd be great.
And we have a question with regards to scoring the vendors. What variables had big impact on your decision making?
During the RFQ process, that's a great question. We looked at a lot of different things. We looked at historic projects. We looked at their willingness to, participate in prevailing wage requirements. We looked at their equal opportunity contracting history. That's actually our EOC team that did that. That had a fairly significant impact on the outcome, surprisingly. We asked them for, again, examples of how they would go about doing this within the facilities like the ones that we own at the city, which by and large are not that big. And yeah, I'm trying to think back to the RFQ, but I think those are the biggies.
So let me jump in. If I'm a city, and since I've heard these same questions for 30 years, since you're not going to bid a scope, or sounds like the intention is not to actually bid a scope at the end, did the RFQ have any pricing elements in it? Did you reach that direction at all? Okay.
We weren't actually allowed per procurement to ask any pricing questions.
Oh, so, some folks will, some folks won't. It's different by state, different by city, obviously, based on the statutes. The other thing that comes up pretty quickly here, and I think it's a part of the decarbonization question and how you mix long strategies with short strategies. Where are you in lighting? Is it being incorporated in the whole? Do you do it first? How are you guys thinking about that, Lindsay?
Yeah, we know we've got a lot of lighting opportunities out there, not only within our facilities, but also across our streetlight portfolio. And so we are including lighting in the energy savings performance contracting, and we're hoping for some good gains there. In this first portfolio of 60 facilities, we also threw in our streetlights. So we just said, go ahead and take a look at the streetlights. We operate, I think, around 60,000. So that's a huge portfolio of potential savings that we're hoping to tap for decarb in a big way.
Yeah, and once again, it's working intimately with the other departments because in some cities, some locations, the utility owns the streetlights, and there's a case where San Diego owns them, and so you have certainly every right to modernize them in a way that's most effective for you.
Yeah, that's
really
right.
cool.
And I will say, you know, much like the rest of our facilities and you know, typical to our city, our transportation department is behind on capital improvement. We've got a huge backlog of maintenance on those lights, and we have not enough data to really make those improvements efficient. And so our transportation department, now that they've come on, now that the light bulb, so to speak, pun intended, has come on in their heads about the value of this model, they're really excited about the possibility of leveraging our partnership with Willdan to, you know, secure some really detailed GIS mapping and some other sort of preliminary benefits of this investigation. They're excited.
Yeah, that's really cool to help them think about the stuff on their need list. Sometimes it sounds like wish list, but you know, there's been a need list for a long time. I'm still looking for that one individual in these United States who coined the phrase deferred maintenance. I'd like to talk to them a little bit about what that was intended to mean. It doesn't ever seem to line up with reality. The other question that I think comes up about mixing technologies and different applications so that we're just not thinking about lights and thermostats, if you will, is your water and wastewater plants. Are those being incorporated as well into the considerations?
Not yet, but we hope to get there eventually. We have a pretty sophisticated water and wastewater team. They manage their own energy. They've deployed more, you know, megawatts of renewables than I think any other customer in the city of San Diego. They've really got a good game going over there in terms of their energy management. That said, they are also the biggest producer of greenhouse gas emissions for the city, so they also have a big challenge in front of them. We're here to help them, and we hope to bring them around to this model if it's something that can benefit them. And I think they're kind of watching patiently to see what our first outcome is going to be, and you know, make some decisions after that.
Yeah. So the clock's ticking here. I love these fun conversations with smart people, and certainly want to thank you for joining us over and over and over to share your insights. You know, if I'm sitting out there and I'm a municipality, city, town, I'm thinking, well, gosh, how does this apply to me? How can I mix all this together? Because we've got so many challenges. You brought all these people on. Now we know that the departments are engaged and they're thinking about how this might work for them. But gosh, there's going to be new systems and new devices everywhere. I mean, you have this huge training requirement. Have you been thinking ahead about that as well, Lindsay? And how are you going to accomplish all that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think taking a step back a minute, one of the ways that we are attempting to mitigate the future challenge of turnover and, you know, different motivations and priorities as elections happen, and as of course local government political dynamics change, which they are you know, inevitable to do. We've adopted a policy, and again, we have our climate action plan. So the CAP is a legally binding document here in California, so that is going to be really hard to walk back for any political leader. We also have our zero emissions municipal buildings and operations policy. The acronym for that is ZEMBOP. So you'll hear me use that term again, which some people love and some people hate, but hey, it's a term that has stuck here at the cities, which was my goal. ZEMBOP requires, by policy, it's really holding everyone accountable here to build to zero emissions. So all new construction has to be zero, all electric, and deploy as much renewables, as well as fleet charging infrastructure. You know, there's a whole prescription for that. It also addresses retrofits. As we go in and retrofit our facilities, if a gas burning system dies at the end of its life or is just being replaced, it has to be replaced with an electric alternative. And then we have to electrify, you know, fuel switch everything in our facilities by 2035. And we've got this sort of major renovation requirement, so that if we're touching 2 or more systems, we actually then have to go in and electrify everything and improve the efficiency and deploy renewables. And it basically takes what would be relatively small scope projects and blows them up, so that we're just really getting it all done at once. We've got too many facilities to try and go in and piecemeal onesie twosie across these facilities over the next 11 years. If we're touching a facility and we can make it happen, going all the way to zero emissions when we're in there is our goal. And again, thankfully, we've had the right decision makers in place to adopt this policy. One of the things that we have also done to sort of set ourselves up for that long-term success is once that policy was adopted, we went and inventoried every single facility for natural gas burning appliances and for electric capacity to understand what are the electric replacement technologies that are going to be necessary here? What type of electric infrastructure, panel circuit upgrades are necessary to support the new electric load? And then we are now starting to take all of that really rich data from that analysis and turn it into what we're calling fossil fuel elimination plans. So for each department saying, okay, look, here's your inventory of gas burning stuff. According to the end of useful life, here's when you should start thinking about executing retrofits, for these groups of facilities over the next 10 to 11 years. You can do that via engineering, capital improvement projects with engineering and capital projects team. You can do it through in-house retrofits with facilities. We're happy to help you if it fits into the energy savings performance contracting model, sort of just kind of offering up solutions and making sure everybody is aware of this policy and we've got all the right implementers trained. Once all these new technologies are in place through whatever retrofit pathway, enabling our facilities crew to understand how to operate and maintain all of these systems is another big part of this. And so that's sort of, an important component of these partnerships that we're entering into with our vendors. We need them around to train our crews to make sure that they're able to keep these systems running efficiently over time. Or, we're also considering leveraging that third-party partner to provide that service ongoing if that's something we can afford. So yeah, we've got options and internal workforce training, as well as leveraging our retrofits to help bring on external trainees and leveraging them for workforce training for the larger community. That's another element that we're exploring, whether that we can execute that through grant funding or otherwise, that's definitely on our radar as well.
It's a great story all around. Wonderful concept, bringing together partners, wonderful technical solutions. Interestingly enough, it's not all art, it's science. So you collect the data up front, you have inventories, you go get the work done, somehow you got to keep score, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think the fossil fuel elimination plans that we're putting together, those are going to be annually updated documents where we go in and say, okay, fire department, here was what you were going to start implementing, decarbonizing this year. Tell us what you got done. And, we update those each year so that we're keeping track of that inventory and the progress towards electrification. And then, as we execute all of these various contracts, whether it be, an energy savings performance contract or a PPA or an energy energy services management agreement for a microgrid, for example, we've got performance guarantees, we've got annual M&V, and, we're building in these frequent timelines to go and check on the performance and make sure that we're marching steadily in the right direction and staying on track towards that ultimate goal. So,
and that whole keeping score concept is one that really baffled us all for a long time. And guess what? Along came the United States Department of Energy and their support of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and they built tools that actually can help that happen. A very sophisticated, elaborate tool is called eProject Builder, primarily used by the federal government, but it's not a requirement that you're a federal entity for that. And then we heard so loudly from state and local units of government that we just need something more streamlined, that eProject Express came along. And I think best in our time remaining right now, if we can hand it back to the LB&L team. And once again, Lindsay, can't thank you enough for sharing not only with me, but of course the world of listeners out there, the great experiences and insight that you have to offer and consider to advance for the city of San Diego. We'll all be watching you keep score, by the way.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and happy to share resources with anyone that's interested. And I think my email is here, so feel free to reach out, and thanks and good luck.
Great. Dana, off to you.
Great. Actually, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share because I'll be running the slides. So let me do that again. All righty. So thanks. And so in answer to someone's question about the slides and the recording, we will be sending these slides out to you afterward. And then, of course, the recording with that interview we'll be posting in a couple of weeks. There'll be a link on the eProject Builder, eProject Express website. So Dana, I will run the slides for you while you tell folks a little bit about eProject Express.
Great, thanks, Liz. So what is eProject Express and how can it help you with your ESPC projects? eProject Express was designed specifically for state and local governments and educational institutions. It's a streamlined pathway into the eProject Builder platform. So it's the same system as eProject Builder, but it's just much less complex than eProject Builder. It's a free resource maintained by Berkeley Lab with funding from the US Department of Energy. It provides a secure, user-friendly, web-based information tracking and reporting system that enables program administrators and project owners to track and report project investments, track and report job and GHG impacts, standardize the way the ESCOs provide project and M&V summary data, and saves time and effort by having all key project information and document files readily accessible when needed. Next slide. So how can eProject Express benefit municipalities? eProject Express saves time and headaches with free, secure, centralized information and file storage, provides accessible on-demand standard and custom reporting of project and program achievements, makes it easy for cities to illustrate project successes and impacts on efficiency, economic, and environmental stewardship goals, retains critical file documents that can hold ESCOs accountable and help avoid disputes in the future. It simplifies ongoing project data management, even through staff turnover of long projects. It alleviates staff workload. All ESCOs are responsible for uploading data and document for review and approval. What are the benefits of EPX for ESCOs? Again, EPX is streamlined. It's quick for ESCOs to use. It's much less complex than eProject Builder, and it has a one-page Excel-based data entry form. It saves time retrieving vital documents and project information needed during the performance years. It gives owners quick access to the project documents and information when they need it without having to ask or wait for ESCOs to provide it. And ESCOs can clearly see the information they need to collect and summarize for their customers in the EPX template. And you can see a quote here from one of the ESCOs about their experience with using EPX. So let's get a little bit into what EPX does. This is the simple and powerful digital filing cabinet within EPX. It accepts all kinds of documents, Word documents, zip files, Excel documents, PDFs. ESCOs and customers can both save project documents here to preserve and access during the performance period. The filing cabinet saves time finding documents you need and can help prevent disputes. The file checklist, which is up above the upload a file button, is a drop-down list that shows the types of documents that you might consider saving in the file cabinet. Next slide. Here's two quick reports that you can use to show your project's achievements. On the left is the annual M&V summary for a single M&V year. It's a simple one-page report that summarizes key information about your annual M&V results, including verified energy and cost savings. And on the right is the cumulative results report, which provides a great snapshot of how your project has performed year over year, including estimated, guaranteed, and verified annual cost savings. Next slide. This is the analysis and reporting feature, which allows you to create custom reports or use some preset reports. You can customize and save your own reports. And there's also a separate data export function in EPX that allows you to download all of your project data into an Excel file so that you can do more extensive analysis. And with that, I will turn it back over to Liz.
All right, thanks, Dana. So we do have, we're doing these webinars about every quarter. So the next webinar in this series is going to be on September 11th at 11 a.m. Pacific. And this will be focused on higher education. We're going to have someone from Ole Miss come and talk about their extensive experience and what what they're thinking about in terms of ESPC. So we've got a registration link already set up. We will send this information to all of you, this registration link, etc. So if you are interested in learning more about eProject Express, you can go to the eProject Builder website. The link is here. There's a help page which has some more information and on-demand training videos. Anybody who's a user of eProject Express or eProject Builder can get free technical support by emailing epb-support@lbl.gov. So over here on the right hand of this kind of packed full slide, these are a bunch of resources that you all might be interested in. So the first bullet here in the upper right is the ESPC toolkit from the United States Department of Energy under their Better Buildings website. There are a lot of resources there, all kinds of guidance on how to decide to do an ESPC, things around choosing an ESCO, documents around understanding M&V, understanding your guarantee, setting up an ESPC program. There are just lots of resources there, including the long-standing set of MUSH market, that's, you know, local, state, universities, K-12 schools, hospitals, contracting documents. So there is a set of contract documents there, includes RFP documents, all kinds of documents that you would need for either a program or a project to solicit and contract an ESCO. And those will soon be updated. We've gone through a pretty extensive process over the last couple of years to update and get a lot of input from stakeholders, and those are getting close to final. Hopefully they'll come out within the next few months or so. The second bullet here is called the Guaranteed Energy Savings Performance Contracting U, or GESPCU. It's a podcast series, really useful information, 25 concise podcasts. They're segmented to meet different sort of topics and finding the answers to your questions. And that was developed by the Energy Services Coalition that Dale spent many years with and helped produce those podcasts. There's a link here to understanding ESPC financing options. There's also another webinar that's available on leveraging grants and incentives for ESPC. The second to last bullet on the right is about using owner's reps. So if any of you are interested in learning more about what an owner's representative is, how they can be useful to your projects, there's a wonderful document called An Ally in Your Corner. And then for the last bullet here on the bottom, there's a newly released training certificate series. We kind of shorthand call it the owner's rep training, but it's really a training for everyone. It could be anyone in you know, state, local, university, K-12, government, anybody who has to deal with buildings, engineers who are interested in getting into performance contracting. So it's 8 standalone modules that are on the ESPC process, including best practices and roles and responsibilities. A lot of people have been taking this training. A mix of folks in the private sector and public sector are taking this. So we do recommend it for anyone that wants to learn a bit more about ESPC, or if you want to become an ESPC support, you know, technical support, it's a great piece of the training that you can get for your qualifications. And with that, I think we are going to say thank you very much.